Hello and welcome to Shay Zaza, and today I have a Zaza Zooms in, and I've got a special guest here today. He hasn't been on the show before, so please be kind. But he's a friend of mine, and we're going to have a conversation about something that I think is very topical at the moment. This is Felix. Hello, Felix.
Hello. Finally.
Thank you. So finally, I know we've been trying to sort this out for forever, but today we've done it. So thank you very much for coming on. Now,
Pleasure.
Our conversation today is going to be
Yes.
around, we've called it culture versus religion.
Yes.
So, my thinking is we mingle, intertwine these things together quite a bit without realizing that, well, actually, are they separate, do you think?
Yes, they are.
You can't just start with yes, they are and stop. Like, you have to explain.
I'll explain. You have biblical culture,
Yes.
and in that biblical culture, God has already laid down some foundations for us as Christians
Yes.
to operate in.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you have traditional culture.
Yes.
Whether you're African or European or Asian, and those cultures are very strong.
Mm-hmm.
The problem comes is when those two come up against each other.
So you see, I think that a lot of, and again, I'm generalizing. I know I'm generalizing. I always generalize here, but I think that a lot of, let me just say Nigerian Christians, because that's what I think, that a lot of Nigerian Christians don't necessarily know when they're putting traditional culture into Christianity. So there's certain things that traditionally maybe are not acceptable, or you shouldn't do certain things. And I feel like a lot of our Christianity is built around more of our traditional culture than it is the Christian culture.
I agree.
Because I don't even think that when you say they come up against each other, I don't even think they come up against each other. I think the traditional culture just enters the Christian culture, and then we pretend it's one.
That's true. Yeah, that's also true. Yes, I think it's when you take a view outside of it and you look down upon it, then you start to see where that tradition crosses the boundary. Because the biggest challenge for us today in 2024 is, how do we as Christians operate Christianity within the cultures that we come from?
Okay, explain that. When you say the cultures that we come from, like the Nigerian culture.
So you have a Nigerian culture.
Yeah.
You have a European. You have a Nigerian culture. Within a Nigerian culture.
Yeah. How do you operate? Okay,
Yeah.
got to finish.
So even Nigerian culture is a very spurious term, because if you're Yoruba, you have a Yoruba culture.
Yes, even within the Yoruba.
Within the Yoruba culture, you have a culture
Yes.
and traditions.
Yeah.
And those things are then played out. And then when you become a Christian, you find that not all those cultures are acceptable as a Christian. So then what do? How do you operate within the culture of your traditions?
Yeah.
And how do you operate in the culture as being a Christian? And which takes precedence?
Well, I would say that Christian culture takes precedence, and I think that one of the things that I always fight for is, I feel like, I've challenged many persons. I say, is that Christian culture? Is that Yoruba culture? Or is that Igbo culture? Because you bring certain things in, and I don't even think it's deliberate, because you grew up. There's this thing I always talk about. Sorry, I'm just checking that my phone is off, because I don't think I took it. It is off. I think there's this. There's this thing, I've spoken about this before on here, where there was this young girl, I'm sure you've heard about it. It was an email I got many, many years ago, but it still goes around now. And there was a young girl with her mom. Her mom was making fish. Do you know the...
No.
Okay, I'm going to say it again. Sorry. Bear with me. So her mom was cooking fish, and she cut off the head and cut off the tail.
Okay.
And then she put it, and and the daughter asked the mom, why did you do that? And the mom said, that's how we do it. So luckily, grandma was still alive. So when they went to grandma's, the granddaughter asked, why did you do it? And she said, oh, because that's how my mother did it. We do it. And great grandma was alive, thankfully. So they go to great grandma, and they say, why? And she said, because my pot was too small. Thing that so great grandma has done it practically. I can't get this fish into my pot, so I'm going to cut off the head and the tail.
Yes.
However, grandma sees this and thinks that's how we do it. And then mother sees it, that's how we do it. And until granddaughter asks about it, everybody does it like that. There's no questioning. So people come into the Christian culture with their African culture, whatever culture it might be. We're talking
correct.
African because we're African here, but they come with
Yes.
their, and we don't even know that it isn't Christian culture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
of
it's like
course.
that's why we do, and we don't know why we're doing it. So there are many times when I question because of that, I just think, well, okay, explain to me why we're doing this, and I can get on board. But don't just tell me this is how we do
This
it.
is how we do it,
Because
yes.
what does that mean? And I think that's a thing that we struggle with because again, in our culture, that by the time you question, they think that you're.
And that's part of the culture. Part of the culture is not to
It's like
question.
you don't question exactly.
do.
Yeah. So when you now question,
And when you now
the,
question,
you are the badly behaved.
yes.
So
And
it's
I'm
kind
one. Sorry.
No, I'm always getting in trouble because I didn't even know. Because again, my knowledge of the culture is limited because obviously I was raised by a white woman, so I
Yes.
know some of it
Yes.
generally, but I don't know the full. So that thing of questioning again, two cultures. My mother is always like, ask the questions. You know, question. She encourages that.
Of course.
Whereas the African culture doesn't encourage
Doesn't,
that.
no, it doesn't give you room to question. It
doesn't give-
only requires full obedience.
Full obedience. Don't question
Don't
because
question.
I said it. If I had a guest on here the other day and I said to her that, you know, you need to like look at respect your children as human beings. So she said, what does that look like? I said, well, actually paying attention, like all this because I said it. She was like, oh, I do that all the time. But again, because she grew up with it. That's how you know. Because I said it, I'm your mom. I said it just to do.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting because it's you just something just sparked in my spirit about okay. You mentioned children. Now, cultures with children as a Christian, and God has specific wants to foster a specific culture within your home as a Christian.
Yeah.
And if that culture does that culture override your traditional culture?
So I think it does. But I think that because I don't think that traditional culture is all bad. So I think it depends on whether it comes against what the Bible is saying.
It's not so much it's bad, it's just different.
Give me an example. Can you think of an example?
Okay, for example, in my culture, when you see an elderly person, you have to
You kneel down.
kneel down.
Yes, yeah, okay.
None of my kids do that. I don't do that. I don't do that to my mum, and I don't do that to my dad.
This is a tough one because I don't think that, you see, that is a good example because culturally, African culturally, that's what is expected of you to show respect. Now, the Bible says that we should respect our elders, our fathers, our mothers, you know, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So we do need to show respect, but how you show respect
Yes.
differs.
Yes.
And I had this argument with someone because I said, if you come into my house and you see how I speak to my mother,
Yes.
you will think I'm rude. But it's not rude. You know what I mean? It's just a different culture. It's a different culture. So I guess that's, for me, I think that is what you decide in your own little family, what is going to work for you from that point of view. But you have to be able to stand by it because I mean, my kids, although when I sent my son to Nigeria, I said, do whatever your cousin does. You know what I mean? Because I knew he wouldn't know to do it. And I didn't want him to come across as rude.
Of course.
And especially not to embarrass my cousin who he was staying with.
Of course.
But, you know, it's a very interesting one because I think we don't have, you know, it's even when I see my mother, you know, we tend to do I mean, I'll probably bend my knee a bit.
Yeah, I
but we
do.
will
Yeah,
hug.
I do. Yeah,
You know? So
I do.
it's I don't know, it's a tough one.
Because for example, Christian culture stands on two principles. The first principle is love, and the second principle is faith. Now, in the question of love, you love everybody. So I love my wife, I love my children, I love my aunts and uncles, and blah blah blah. How I love them, that's where the kind of issue comes in.
Yeah.
Because they might not necessarily receive it that way.
But this is that whole love languages thing.
Yes, that's also
I
true.
suppose you have to you
Yes.
need to learn because no, it's true because I think sometimes you have to really learn how people, because again, now this is a thing that I don't even know if it's cultural because let's say we take a typical Nigerian mom, she might think that, I think sometimes they love and respect, they just join them together to show that you love them and they respect them. You must kneel down or whatever. They kind of join it. Whereas for me, that's not necessarily love. That's more respect.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of join things together. So if I know that that's what she considers to be love, I may just do it just because I don't need the stress. I don't need what will come if, you know, I mean, I'm already you know,
Yeah,
borderline. On the
Rebellion.
edge.
Rebellion is always around the corner.
Well, I don't think it's rebellion, but because of that cultural thing, it comes across as, bad behavior.
That behaviour.
Yeah, which.
But if again, we're in 2024, not 1965.
Yes.
In 2024, what are you going to pass down to your children?
So are you saying that does tradition change? Like cultural, like does tradition change?
If tradition keeps a society functional,
Yeah.
then there's no reason for it to change.
Okay.
It's when society, and society means all of us, and that society starts to break down and we're still using the same culture and traditions. There's a disconnect between the two.
Yeah.
So therefore, something has to change. So if it means that tradition and cultures have to change, in order for culture to change, traditions have to change.
But would you say, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. Would you say, because one could argue, I'm playing.
Devil's advocate.
I wasn't going to say that because they'll say devil's. I was trying to think of what's another
There isn't
term
another
for
one.
that. Okay, I'm playing devil's advocate. Because obviously we can argue and say, well, the Bible and what is said in the Bible is how many years old. So how can we now say that, okay, we're sticking to that when things have changed?
Well, are you going to tell God that he was wrong?
Don't attack me. That's not the point of this. Well, no, you're not. But I mean, because when you're saying that, well, I'm not. I think that because the other thing I think about culture and Christian culture is like, there's always context as well.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
sometimes we don't take the context.
Yeah,
so I have a particular auntie, cracks me up. She won't say any. She'll send me, like how they send Bible verses and all this thing every so often, and then she would look at my profile picture, yes. And one day she just sent me a Bible verse. She didn't say anything, just sent a Bible verse. She didn't type out the Bible verse. She just put the Bible verse, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I can't remember what the verse was. When I went to read the verse, it said that it's that verse about women shall not wear men's clothes.
Oh, you're in trouble.
Because I was wearing trousers.
Yeah, you're in trouble. Yeah, you see.
And I thought, at what point do I tell her that men wore dresses in that time? Do you understand what I mean? Because here she is, like, on my case for wearing trousers. But really, what did men wear back in the day if we're going to get that? So it's little things like that. And then men had long hair. And
If we're gonna go down that road.
we're going to go. But she literally just sent the Bible verse, like almost like a little reminder to me that, because she doesn't wear trousers to this day.
Okay.
She doesn't wear trousers because,
Fair enough.
she doesn't wear trousers, which I'm wearing trousers right now. I'm wearing trousers.
So no female should ever wear jeans.
No, of course not. That's men's clothing. But you see, my argument is men's clothing of that time was not trousers.
No, it was not trousers, no.
So, but I haven't told her that yet. I'm saving that for for the day that we get into a proper argument.
That would wipe out most of the Asian continent then, because they don't wear trousers. Men don't tend to wear trousers anyway.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't even make any sense. But she hasn't stopped to think. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when you don't take the context,
Yeah, exactly.
then you now come up with things that just don't make any sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And I guess what we can argue is that God, it will make sense all through the
Yeah,
ages, because he knows and he sees the end from the beginning. So he's okay, you win that.
Yeah. And it does, and it's kind of, they're like nuances. There are slight nuances in the Bible because, if you lived in a hot country,
yeah,
you wouldn't be wearing that. I live in a cold country. No.
Yeah.
If you want to walk around there, so if I was a Christian, I lived in Alaska.
Yeah.
What do you think I'd be wearing?
A dress, of course.
You wear a dress?
No.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, no, but exactly. So it's almost like because I think sometimes we're too literal, and I'm always getting accused of being very literal just in my normal life. Yeah. But I think sometimes with the Bible, and I'm not saying that the Bible is true, because before somebody comes to attack me, but I think sometimes we can be very, as in you don't even
dogmatic.
You just take one thing and you don't look at everything else around it, and then you use that thing to beat somebody down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes I just think that's I don't know.
Well, it's all the Bible's all about context. Context. The verse before and the verse after.
Exactly.
And the verses around
the
Bible.
Yeah.
not just the one by
Not
the
just
block
the
up.
one.
Very, very
that
narrow.
one, you know that one that we say that wives submit to your husband.
Yeah,
That's
it's
it.
very narrow. But we
Just
never,
pick the one.
but we never, because I hear that a lot, and I never hear about the verses afterwards.
Yeah.
Which there are a lot of, and I never hear about the verses before it.
Exactly. Doesn't he say submit to one another, and then wives, yes, husbands love your yeah. I mean, I think we're getting a little bit better now, but 10 years ago it was only
Now,
wives submit
where
to
does
your
that,
husbands.
where does that factor in traditional culture? If you read that verse there, because that verse there about love, wives submit to their husbands.
Yeah.
That's a nice one that fits into
Yes,
the
fits into the culture, the African culture.
But
Yes.
the verse before that. What about the verse before that? Why is that one not promoted as much?
Because the people promoting it are male
Amen.
a lot of the time. So I think that's also the other thing, you know. So there's it's actually it's a kind of worms, to be fair, because a lot of the time when it's, but sometimes, you know, I say this, but sometimes I think that for women we're our own worst enemies, because I do think that sometimes we propagate the certain things, you know, because it's a woman that will look at me and tell me that I shouldn't be wearing something I'm wearing, more so than a man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
women
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah.
are worse.
I don't know why that happens, but they tend
I
to.
honestly don't get that. And I think because even like when I look at situations where you've had a bad mother-in-law and then you become a bad mother-in-law, I'm like, why would you do that when you've been through that? You know what I mean? But I think I don't know what it is.
But why would? But the root is, why would the mother-in-law be bad? Surely it's in her interest for her
Yeah.
to make her have a good relationship with her, because she's the taking offspring of her grandchildren, and the grandchildren, they don't miss nothing. They see everything. You may think they don't see it, but they do see everything, and they will tell everything.
But you know, I don't know if it's, again, I think it's culture, and because I'm always horrified at how some of like Nigerian people that I know, how they treat the people looking after their children. I'm like, how does that even make sense? This person is cooking food for your kids. This person is, you know what I mean? I don't know how that makes sense. So I don't know if it's that we don't think it through, or if it's that we're that stupid. I don't believe we're that stupid.
Again, it's back to that whole the cultural thing of dominance. Because if someone's looking after your children and then you treat them badly, the reason why you're treating them badly is because you're dominant over them and not thinking about actually they're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Because your children are being brought up by somebody else, not by you. And unfortunately, sometimes that actually can be played into people's psyche into thinking that actually, I wish I had the time to that, but other things are more important than me looking after my children. And that has consequences, which you don't know until down the line, because those kids grow up and repeat the same circle, or go off the rails. And then we have a problem, which we reap today in 2024.
So, okay, back to culture and religion.
Yes.
Do you think I don't even know how to phrase this question. How do you think we can get it right so that I don't even really like the word religion, to be fair, because I don't feel that Christianity is a religion. I feel like it's a relationship. But anyway, the title says culture versus religion, so let's stick with that. But you know what I mean? Like, how can we get the balance right so that?
Well, I think the first thing is going back to that first verse. Is that first verse before wives submit to your husbands? Let's focus on the first verse. The first verse says, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church." So the emphasis is on husbands, men, learning to love.
Yeah.
Right? And then giving that love out to their offspring, to their wives, but loving their wives first. And then that love can then be represented into their children. And then that love then cascaded downwards into your family. Because then your children will have kids, hopefully, you know. And then that love will be, again, permeated downward, because there will be a precedent set within the family that love is the first foundation of our family, not anything else. And then it will go, and then you'll see change, because then outside of the home, you will walk in love.
Yeah.
because you've received love,
it's- yeah,
and you
it's-
understand what love is and how love operates. But then there's lots of people walking around who don't know how love operates, who don't actually know what love is,
Yeah.
and they're sitting in our churches
100%.
because but people will never say it from the pulpit, unless you say it from the pulpit, it would just be brushed over, because we're all looking at doctrine and looking at things you do, except the first verse is about love first, before you talk about doctrine and anything else. Because you ought to be able to love human beings whom God created, regardless of who they are.
Yeah.
But if you can't do that, the question is, are you really operating love or just operating tradition?
You see, and I mean, this is love for me is a huge thing, because I feel that if we can get love right,
Yeah.
we're sorted. I really honestly don't think that there's anything more, I mean, well, anything more to Christianity than love. You know what I mean?
If you wanted to build a society, if you built it on love, you would love that your neighborhood would look nice.
Yeah.
You wouldn't destroy your neighborhood because you'd love your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You wouldn't destroy your neighbor because you would love your neighbor.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So love then cascades downwards into all facets of society. That's how you get a stable society, and it functions from there. It's not when bad people come in and want to destroy it.
Yeah. Okay, so if we're saying that we use love as the base or as the foundation, does that then sometimes, I think I know the answer to this, but does that then sometimes rule out some traditional things that would come in, because
Unfortunately,
love is your
yes.
base? Okay, so controversial. Talking about the way our children greet, and my children are like your children, the way our children greet the Nigerians, that is probably not the accepted way or expected way. And we put love at the center of that. How does that play? You see, because I think I've always had this thing that as long as you're polite, you're respectful, and I say this thing all the time, which is maybe I shouldn't. I always say kill them with love. You know what I mean? Just, let love be your driving force. Let love be your, and I think that we've kind of got away with it in art, because the way my kids love those people that are expecting more from them, they forget what they're expecting, because they you know what I mean? We kind of dazzle them with love, and then they forget what they're expecting. But I think that sometimes, well, actually, I think love just wins. Period.
I think again, it's like if you're in a family structure. Going back to what I've said, husbands love your wives.
Yeah.
If I love my wife, my kids don't. They see everything. They see
they see it,
how I operate with my wife.
Yeah.
And they see and if I have mentioned love, they know what love means. So they receive it, and then when I'm talking with them, and when they're talking back, when we're having a conversation, when we communicate from that basis, and they understand that.
Yeah.
And then when they're with their friends, they also understand, because they're also very loyal to their friends, and they love their friends, and they're very loyal to their friends. And that's a cascade from their house, and their house is a sanctuary.
Yeah.
So whatever goes on outside, when they come back, they know that there's love in their house.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's why it's I mean, I grew up in in households where fear is the operative word.
Yeah.
Not because of you would never dare go and hug your. Exactly.
Yeah.
You see?
You won't even speak.
Exactly.
I remember I was at my cousin's house growing up once, and I'd never seen it before. And my uncle was coming home, and they heard the horn at the gate.
Yes.
And all my cousins disappeared.
Right,
And
yeah.
I didn't know I was supposed to disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be fair, my uncle didn't, I'm not sure he expected me to disappear. He received me very well, but I didn't disappear anywhere, because I wasn't used to that
Yes.
culture.
Exactly.
It was like the moment daddy comes home, out of sight.
And again, this is what we're breeding. This is what we're cascading down, because those kids will see that and think, well, that's the norm. That's how we should operate.
Yeah.
But is that true?
I'm looking at the time. We're running out of time.
Running out of time.
Yeah. And I don't even think we've scratched the surface. I don't think we've scratched the surface, because it's such a huge,
it is a huge
topic.
Yes, it is a huge. And there's a facets that go off it as well.
There's so many
tangents and stuff.
So, okay, if we can round up, what would you say I mean, we called it culture versus religion. I don't even know if that title counts, but what would you say if you were
I say practice culture as long as culture doesn't override Christian culture.
Christian culture?
And if you have a choice between the two, always choose the Christian culture, because at least you'll be accountable for the other one, and God can forgive you with this one.
Brilliant. I think I agree with that. I think our whole lives should be lived by Christian culture, and I think sometimes we don't. So many other things are playing and fighting,
yes,
to be there.
yes.
But as Christians, I think that's that whole thing of mindset change.
Yeah, of course,
you give your life
yes,
renewal
of course,
like
yes.
Because it does take a change, because that's
It takes
if,
a change.
if
Yes,
you're
of
not
course.
raised like that,
Yes, we're not raised exactly.
then it's
yes.
a completely different thing.
It's a very,
So
very
I
different
think
thing.
yes, so I think I will agree and say mindset change. That's what you need to do. Christian culture takes control. But anyway, let us know what you think, and do follow us on YouTube. And yeah, we'll see you next time.